The email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was already in bed, but sleep hadn't come yet. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I almost ignored it. Work emails at midnight rarely contain good news, but something made me look. Subject line: Revised Operations Plan, Final Version. Sender: Michael Thompson, my son. I sat up, clicked it open. The attachment was a PDF, 43 pages. I recognized the format immediately. It was the blueprint we'd spent 18 months building together. The succession plan for Thompson Industrial Services, the company I'd founded 29 years ago in a rented garage with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox. I opened it, read the first page, then the second. By page 5, my chest felt tight. They'd changed everything. My role as managing director, redefined to consultant emeritus. My signature authority on contracts over $50,000, removed. My access to the main operational accounts, transferred to a streamlined approval committee consisting of Michael, his wife Jennifer, and Paul Hendricks, our longtime attorney. The quarterly board meetings I'd chaired for 3 decades, now chaired by Michael, with me listed as optional attendee. The retirement timeline we'd agreed on, 2 years of joint leadership, then a gradual handoff, condensed to 90 days. 90 days. Then I was out. Not retired. Out. I read every word, every clause, every footnote. I noticed the metadata at the bottom of page 43. The document had been edited by 4 people: Michael, Jennifer, Paul, and someone named D. Morrison, who I'd never heard of. The revision history showed 11 drafts over the past 6 weeks. 6 weeks. They'd been working on this for 6 weeks, and nobody had mentioned it to me. Not during our Monday strategy calls, not during the family dinners, not during the site visits where Michael and I walked job sites together, discussing timelines and labor costs like we always had. Nothing. I set the phone down, stared at the ceiling. My wife, Christine, was asleep beside me, her breathing soft and even. I didn't wake her. Instead, I picked up the phone again and read the document a second time, slower now, looking for the details I might have missed. There were plenty. The company vehicles assigned to my name, reassigned to Executive Pool. The office I'd occupied on the 2nd floor, noted for reconfiguration to maximize collaborative workspace. The discretionary budget I used for emergency repairs and client relations, cut by 70%. Even the small things. My name removed from the website's leadership page. My email signature pre-written for me in the appendix: Thomas Thompson, founder and advisor. Advisor. I'd built this company from nothing. Hired every employee, signed every contract, sweated through every recession and celebrated every expansion. I'd put my name on the line when banks wouldn't lend to us. I'd worked 100-hour weeks when Michael was still in diapers, and now I was an advisor. I checked the time. 12:14 a.m., I opened a new message, typed Michael's email address into the recipient line. Subject: RE, Revised Operations Plan, Final Version, Body, Received. I hit send. Then I turned off the phone, set it face down on the nightstand, and closed my eyes. But I didn't sleep. Christine noticed first. She always did. The next morning, I was at the kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper when she came downstairs. She poured herself a cup, sat across from me, and studied my face. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing." "Thomas." I folded the newspaper, looked at her. "They updated the succession plan," I said. "Sent it to me last night." "Without discussing it with you?" "Correct." She didn't ask for details. She knew me well enough to know I'd tell her when I was ready. Instead, she sipped her coffee and waited. I told her everything: the redefined role, the stripped authorities, the condensed timeline, the 6 weeks of secret revisions. When I finished, she set her cup down carefully. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet." "You're not going to fight it?" I didn't say that. She watched me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Good," she said. I went to the office that morning like I always did. Arrived at 6:30 a.m. before most of the crew clocked in. The building was quiet, the parking lot empty except for the night security guard's sedan and my truck. I parked in my usual spot, the one closest to the side entrance, marked with a faded sign that read, "Reserved T. Thompson." I wondered how long that sign would stay up. Inside, I made another pot of coffee in the break room and sat in my office. The space was exactly as I'd left it the day before. Blueprints spread across the desk, a stack of vendor invoices waiting for review, photos on the wall, construction sites, ribbon cuttings, the crew at last year's company picnic. I opened my computer and checked the shared project calendar. There was a meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. Leadership strategy session. I wasn't invited. I checked the attendee list. Michael, Jennifer, Paul Hendricks, and someone listed as D. Morrison, strategic consultant. The same D. Morrison from the document metadata. I sat back in my chair, stared at the calendar entry. Then I clicked on the conference room reservation. It was booked in conference room A, the large corner room with the glass walls, the one we used for major client presentations. I opened my email, scrolled through the recent messages, found one from 3 weeks ago, sent by Jennifer to the leadership team. Subject: Strategic Planning, Recurring Meetings. I hadn't been included in the distribution. I closed the email, opened the employee directory, searched for D. Morrison. Nothing. I tried the vendor database. Nothing there either. I picked up my phone and called Paul Hendricks. He answered on the third ring. "Tom, good morning." "Morning, Paul. Quick question. Who's D. Morrison?" A pause. "Ah," Paul said. "Morrison is a consultant we brought in to help with the transition planning, very experienced in corporate succession." "When did we bring him in?" "About 6 weeks ago. Michael thought it would be helpful to have an outside perspective. And nobody thought to mention this to me." Another pause. "Tom," Paul said carefully, "I think that's a conversation you should have with Michael." "I see. I'm sure he was planning to brief you. Things have just been moving quickly." "Right, thanks, Paul." I hung up, sat there in the quiet office, listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. The crew started arriving around 7 a.m. I heard their voices in the hallway, the usual morning banter. Someone laughed. A radio turned on somewhere in the warehouse. I stayed in my office. At 8:45 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Voices. Michael's voice, then Jennifer's, then Paul's. They walked past my office without stopping. I waited until 9 a.m. Then I stood up, straightened my shirt, and walked down the hallway to conference room A. The door was closed. Through the glass walls, I could see 4 people seated around the table. Michael at the head, Jennifer to his right, Paul across from her, and a man I didn't recognize, mid-50s, gray suit, briefcase open in front of him. D. Morrison, presumably. I opened the door. All 4 of them looked up. "Tom," Michael said. His face registered surprise, then something else. Discomfort, maybe. "I didn't realize you'd be joining us." "I work here," I said. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me. Jennifer's expression was neutral, but her posture had shifted, shoulders back, chin up. She'd been expecting this. "This is a closed strategy session," she said. I gathered that. "We're discussing operational transitions," Michael said. "It's probably better if we handle this separately and then bring you up to speed afterward." "Is that right?" Paul cleared his throat. "Tom, why don't we schedule some time later this week to review everything? I think that would be more productive." I looked at the man in the gray suit. "You must be Morrison." He stood, extended his hand. "David Morrison, pleased to meet you." I didn't shake it. "Mr. Morrison," I said, "can you tell me exactly what you've been hired to do?" He glanced at Michael. Michael nodded. "I specialize in executive transitions," Morrison said. "My role is to ensure a smooth leadership handoff with minimal operational disruption." "And who hired you?" I was brought on by the incoming management team, meaning my son and his wife. That's correct. I turned to Michael. You hired a consultant to manage my exit without telling me. Dad, Michael said, it's not like that. Then what is it like? Jennifer leaned forward. Thomas, this is exactly the kind of reaction we were hoping to avoid. This transition needs to be handled professionally, not emotionally. Professionally, I repeated. Yes. I looked at her, really looked at her. She'd been part of the family for 6 years now, ever since she and Michael got married. I'd welcomed her into the business, taught her the systems, trusted her judgment. And now she was sitting in a closed meeting, planning my removal and calling me emotional for objecting. I see, I said. I turned and walked to the door. Tom, Paul said, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. I stopped, looked back at him. Paul, I said, you've been our attorney for 15 years. You know the company bylaws. You know the shareholder structure. You know exactly who has authority here. I do. Good. Then you know I'm still the majority owner and managing director, which means I don't need an invitation to attend strategy meetings about my own company. Paul's expression didn't change, but I saw the slight tightening around his eyes. I'm aware of the current structure, he said, but as your attorney, I'd advise you to think carefully about how you want to approach this. Consider me advised. I opened the door and walked out. I didn't go back to my office. Instead, I walked down to the warehouse floor, where the crew was prepping materials for the day's jobs. Ray Martinez, our senior foreman, was checking invoices against a delivery that had just arrived. Morning, boss, he said. Morning, Ray. How's the Riverside project looking? On schedule. We're pouring the foundation tomorrow if the weather holds. Good. I stood there watching the crew work. These were people I'd hired, people I'd trained, people who'd been with me through expansions and layoffs and everything in between. Ray glanced at me. You okay? Fine, I said. Just checking in. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't press. I stayed on the floor for another 20 minutes, then headed back upstairs. When I reached my office, I found Michael waiting outside the door. Dad, he said, we need to talk. All right. We went inside. I closed the door. Michael sat in one of the visitor chairs. I sat behind my desk. That wasn't how I wanted you to find out, he said. Find out about what, exactly? The revised plan, Morrison, any of it. Then why didn't you tell me? He hesitated. Because I knew you'd react like this. Like what? Defensive. Territorial. I didn't respond. Dad, Michael said, leaning forward, this isn't personal. This is about what's best for the company. And you decided that without consulting me. I'm trying to protect what you built. By erasing me from it? That's not what this is. Then explain it to me. He sighed, rubbed his face. The business landscape has changed, he said. We need to modernize, streamline, bring in new systems and new perspectives, and that means making some structural changes. I'm not opposed to change, Michael. I've been adapting this company for 30 years. I know, but it's time for a new generation to lead, and that transition needs to happen cleanly. Cleanly, I said. Yes, meaning quickly. He met my eyes, meaning efficiently. I leaned back in my chair. Whose idea was this? I asked. Yours or Jennifer's? It was a mutual decision. Morrison's recommendations? Morrison confirmed what we were already thinking. And Paul agreed to all of this. Paul understands the legal realities. I nodded slowly. All right, I said. I'll review the plan in detail. We can discuss it next week. Michael looked surprised. That's it? What did you expect? I don't know. More pushback, I guess. I'm not going to argue with you in the hallway, Michael. If you want to make changes to the company structure, we'll do it properly. With documentation and legal review and full transparency. Okay? Good. He stood up. One more thing, I said. He paused at the door. Next time you want to hire a consultant to plan my exit, tell me first. He didn't respond, just nodded and left. I sat alone in my office for a long time after that, staring at the photos on the wall. Then I picked up my phone and sent Christine a text. Need to talk tonight. Important. Her reply came 30 seconds later. I'll make dinner. That evening, I told Christine everything. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten 10,000 meals together, where we'd helped Michael with homework, where we'd celebrated promotions and weathered crises. I laid out the details methodically, the revised plan, the secret meetings, Morrison's involvement, Paul's quiet complicity, Jennifer's controlled dismissal of my objections. Christine listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "They're trying to force you out." "I know. They think you won't fight it." "Maybe. Will you?" I looked at her. "What do you think I should do?" She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "I think," she said, "you should let them believe they've already won." But that night, I couldn't sleep again. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios, conversations, strategies, countermoves. Around 2 a.m., I got up and went down to my home office, turned on the computer, started digging through old files, the original company bylaws, the shareholder agreements, the succession framework we'd drafted 5 years ago. I read every word. By dawn, I understood exactly what they'd done, and I understood exactly how to respond. As the story unfolds, hit the hype button, like, subscribe, and write in the comments. Would you forgive them or walk away? The following Monday, I arrived at the office at 5 p.m. The building was dark, empty. Even the security guard was making his rounds outside. I let myself in through the side entrance and went straight to the records room on the 3rd floor. The company kept physical copies of all major contracts and legal documents there. Old school maybe, but I'd learned a long time ago that paper trails were harder to erase than digital ones. I knew what I was looking for. 3 years ago, when we'd first started discussing succession planning, I'd worked with Paul to create a framework that would protect both the company and my interests. We'd built in contingencies, safeguards, automatic triggers designed to prevent exactly the kind of hostile takeover I was now facing. Michael and Jennifer didn't know about those contingencies. Why would they? They were buried in 60-page legal documents that most people skimmed, but I'd read every word when I signed them, and I remembered. I found the file in the cabinet marked Corporate Governance 2020-2022, pulled it out, flipped through until I found the relevant section. Article 7, Section 4, Founder Protection Provisions. I read it twice to make sure I remembered it correctly. Then I pulled out my phone and took photos of every page. By 6 a.m., I was back in my office with coffee and the files spread across my desk. The language was dense, but the meaning was clear. Any modification to my role or authority required unanimous board approval, and the board included me. Any attempt to remove me from operational control without my consent triggered an automatic reversion of equity distribution, giving me increased voting power. They couldn't force me out, not legally. But they could make it painful, uncomfortable, embarrassing. They could isolate me, undermine me, turn the company against me, unless I moved first. I opened my computer and started drafting emails. At 7:30 a.m., Ray Martinez knocked on my door. "Got a minute, boss?" "Sure. What's up?" He stepped inside, closed the door. "I need to ask you something, and I want a straight answer." "All right. Are you leaving?" I set down my pen. "What makes you ask that?" "Because half the crew is talking about it. Jennifer held a meeting with the site supervisors last Friday. Said there were going to be some leadership changes. some transitions, told them to expect some shifts in reporting structure. She held a meeting with the supervisors. Yeah, without telling me. That's why I'm asking. I leaned back in my chair. Ray, I'm not leaving, not voluntarily. He studied my face. But they want you to. Apparently. That's bullshit. Maybe. No, maybe about it. You built this place. Everyone knows it. I appreciate that. He crossed his arms. So, what are you going to do? I'm going to make sure the company is protected. From your own son? From anyone who tries to dismantle what we've built. He nodded slowly. You need anything from me, you let me know. I will. Thanks, Ray. After he left, I sat there thinking about Jennifer's meeting, about the narrative she was building, about how carefully she was laying the groundwork for my exit. She was smart. I'd give her that. But she'd made a mistake. She'd told the supervisors before securing the legal authority to actually remove me, which meant she was counting on me to roll over. I picked up the phone and called Paul Hendricks. Tom, Paul said when he answered. I was just about to call you. Were you? Yes. I wanted to follow up on last week's conversation. Good. I have some questions about the revised succession plan. A pause. All right. Specifically, I'm wondering how the proposed changes comply with Article 7, Section 4 of the Corporate Governance Framework. Silence on the other end. Paul? I'm here. I'm just pulling up the document. I waited, heard the sound of papers rustling, keyboard clicks. Okay, Paul said finally. I'm looking at it now. So you're aware of the founder protection provisions? Yes. And you're aware that the revised plan violates those provisions? Another pause. Tom, Paul said carefully. The provisions you're referring to were written under a different operational context. The current situation doesn't change the legal language. Either the provisions are valid or they're not. The provisions are valid, but they can be renegotiated. Not without my agreement. Tom, Paul, I'm not interested in renegotiation. I'm interested in enforcement. If Michael and Jennifer want to change my role, they need unanimous board approval. They don't have it. We can work through this. We already are. I'm telling you that any attempt to implement the revised plan without my consent will be challenged legally. And I'm telling you that as the company's attorney, you have an obligation to advise your clients of that fact. I understand your position. Do you understand the equity reversion clause? Silence. Paul? Yes, I understand it. Good. Then you understand that if they try to force this through, they'll lose voting control. Tom, I don't think that's in anyone's best interest. Neither is forcing me out of my own company. I hung up, sat there for a moment, heart pounding. Then I opened my email and sent a message to the entire board of directors, all 5 members, including Michael and Jennifer. Subject: Board Meeting Request. Article 7 Compliance Review. Body: Pursuant to company bylaws, I am requesting an emergency board meeting to review the proposed operational changes outlined in the revised operations plan, dated date. Specifically, I am requesting a formal vote on any modifications to existing governance structures as required by Article 7, Section 4. Please confirm availability for a meeting within the next 7 business days. Regards, Thomas Thompson, Managing Director. I hit send. Then I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out of the office. I drove to the Riverside site, where the crew was prepping for the foundation pour. It was a clean, simple job, a small commercial building, nothing complicated. But it was ours. One of 30 active projects scattered across the county. I parked my truck and walked over to where Ray was reviewing the blueprints with 2 of the newer guys. Boss, Ray said, surprised. Didn't expect to see you out here today. Wanted to check on the progress. We're good. Forms are set. Concrete trucks due in an hour. Good. I stood there watching the crew work. The morning sun was warming up, burning off the fog. The air smelled like dirt and diesel. This was the part of the business I'd always loved: the building, the tangible progress, the satisfaction of seeing something go from blueprint to reality. Michael had never loved this part. He was good with spreadsheets and client meetings and strategic planning, but he'd never had much interest in getting his hands dirty. Jennifer had even less. I stayed at the site for 2 hours, helping the crew with small tasks, answering questions, making adjustments. When the concrete truck arrived, I watched the pour, watched the guys smooth and level the mix, checking measurements, working with practiced efficiency. Ray came over to stand next to me. "You miss this?" he asked. "Sometimes. You could still do it. Run a crew. Build things. Maybe. Or you could keep running the whole operation and let Michael learn to appreciate what we do out here." I smiled. That would require him wanting to learn. Fair point. We watched the pour finish. The crew cleaned up, loaded the tools back onto the trucks. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. Email from Michael. "Received your board meeting request. We need to talk before we schedule anything." I texted back, "No. Board meeting first. Discussion after." His reply came immediately. "This isn't productive." I didn't respond. That evening, Christine and I sat on the back porch with wine and watched the sun set. "How was your day?" she asked. "Productive," she smiled. "Did you burn any bridges?" "Not yet, just made it clear I'm not going anywhere." "How did they react?" "Michael wants to talk. Jennifer's probably planning her countermove. Paul's stuck in the middle." "And Morrison?" "Haven't heard from him, but I imagine he's updating his strategy." Christine sipped her wine. "You know they're going to fight this." "I know." "And you're ready?" "I've been ready for 30 years. She looked at me. "Thomas, I need to tell you something." "All right." "I've been noticing things. For a while now." "What kind of things?" "Small things. Conversations that stop when you enter a room. Jennifer making decisions without consulting you. Michael deferring to her instead of asking your opinion." "I've noticed too." "I know, but there's more." I set down my glass. "Tell me." "Last month, I ran into Jennifer at the market. We talked for a few minutes. Normal stuff. But then she mentioned something about the transition timeline and how important it was to manage expectations. I asked her what she meant, and she got flustered, changed the subject. "When was this?" 3 weeks ago, right around the time they hired Morrison." "Did you tell me?" "I started to, but then I thought about it and realized you needed to see this for yourself. If I'd told you, you would have confronted them immediately, and they would have adjusted their strategy. So you let them think they were getting away with it." "I let you see who they really are." I looked at her, my wife of 32 years, the woman who'd been with me through everything. "You're scary when you're strategic," I said. She smiled. "I learned from the best." The next morning, I got to the office at my usual time. As I walked through the hallway, I noticed something odd. The door to my office was open. I always locked it when I left. I stepped inside. Everything looked normal at first glance. Desk organized, papers stacked neatly, computer off. But then I noticed the filing cabinet. The bottom drawer, the one where I kept hard copies of all major contracts and legal documents, was slightly ajar. I pulled it open. Empty. I checked the other drawers. They were fine. Everything else was exactly where I'd left it. But the contracts were gone. I walked down the hall to Michael's office. His door was closed. I knocked. "Come in," he called. I opened the door. Michael was at his desk. Jennifer sat in one of the visitor chairs. "Morning, Dad," Michael said. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Someone removed files from my office," I said. "We relocated them. Jennifer said. The legal documents are now stored in the central filing system for better access control. You went into my office without permission. It's not your office, Thomas. It's company property. I looked at Michael. You authorize this? He hesitated. We're implementing a new document management protocol. All sensitive files need to be centralized. When did this happen? Last night. After I sent the board meeting request. The timing is coincidental. I didn't respond, just looked at both of them. Jennifer stood up. Thomas, I understand this feels personal, but it's not. It's about operational efficiency. Operational efficiency, I repeated. Yes. Moving my files in the middle of the night is about operational efficiency. Those files belong to the company, not to you. I'm the founder and majority shareholder. For now. The room went silent. Michael shot Jennifer a look. She didn't back down. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Jennifer said, that the current ownership structure is under review as part of the succession planning process. By whom? By the incoming management team, with Morrison's guidance. I turned to Michael. Is she speaking for you now? He didn't answer. Michael. Dad, he said finally. We're trying to do this the right way, but you're making it difficult. I'm making it difficult. Yes, by refusing to accept that it's time to step back. I didn't refuse anything. I requested a board meeting, which is my legal right. A board meeting to block the transition. A board meeting to ensure the transition is handled legally. Jennifer crossed her arms. We've already consulted with Paul. The revised plan is legally sound. Then you have nothing to worry about, unless you're planning to sabotage it. I looked at her, really looked at her. Jennifer, I said, I built this company before you were born. I've survived recessions and lawsuits and near bankruptcies. I've negotiated with unions and suppliers and clients who tried every trick in the book to undercut me, and I'm still here. Times change. People don't. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know exactly what you're doing, and I know exactly how to stop it. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Is that a threat? She asked. It's a fact. Michael stood up. Dad, this isn't productive. No, it's not. I turned and walked out. I spent the rest of the morning making phone calls. First, I called every member of the board individually, confirmed they'd received my meeting request, confirmed their availability. 3 of the 5 board members, all longtime colleagues who'd known me for decades, agreed immediately. The other 2, Michael and Jennifer, sent emails stating they needed more time to review the agenda. I replied to both. Board bylaws require a meeting within 7 business days of request. Meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Attendance mandatory. Then I called our insurance broker. Tom, he said, what can I do for you? I need to review our key person insurance policies. Any particular reason? Just due diligence. He emailed me the documents within an hour. I read through them carefully. But there was one clause I'd forgotten about. The policies designated me as the sole authorized contact for any changes or claims, not the board, not the management team, me. I made a note of it, then I called our bank. Tom Thompson, I said when the branch manager answered, I need to schedule a meeting to review our business accounts. Of course, is there a problem? No, just routine oversight. We scheduled it for Thursday morning. By noon, I'd made a dozen calls, confirmed a dozen small details, put a dozen pieces in place. Christine called around 1 p.m. How's it going? She asked. Moving forward. They're going to realize what you're doing. Eventually. And then what? Then we'll see how committed they really are. She was quiet for a moment. Thomas, are you sure about this? They're family. I know. Michael is your son. I know that too. Once you start this, there's no going back. I thought about the files removed from my office, about Jennifer's cold dismissal, about Michael's silence. They started it, I said. I'm just finishing it. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. I got to the office at 7 a.m. Elizabeth Chen was waiting in the parking lot. Ready? She asked. As ready as I can be. We went inside, straight to conference room A. I set up my presentation. Elizabeth reviewed the documents one more time. At 8:30 a.m., Richard and Patricia arrived. Morning, Richard said. He looked grim. Hell of a way to start the week. It's necessary, I said. Patricia sat down, opened her laptop. I've been documenting everything per your request. The timeline is solid. Good. At 8:45 a.m., Paul Hendricks arrived. He looked exhausted. Tom, he said. Elizabeth, I wasn't expecting outside counsel. You're representing Michael and Jennifer, Elizabeth said. Tom needs independent representation. This is going to get messy. It already is. At 8:55 a.m., Michael and Jennifer arrived. Jennifer stopped when she saw Elizabeth. Who's this? She demanded. Elizabeth Chen, I said. My attorney. You brought a lawyer to a board meeting? You're planning to accuse me of embezzlement. I brought appropriate representation. Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances. We're not accusing you of anything, Michael said. We're presenting financial irregularities for board review. Same thing. They sat down. The room felt electric with tension. At 9 a.m. exactly, Patricia called the meeting to order. Emergency board meeting of Thompson Industrial Services. All members present. Also present, Paul Hendricks, attorney for Michael and Jennifer Thompson, Elizabeth Chen, attorney for Thomas Thompson. Jennifer leaned forward. Before we start, I want to object to the presence of outside counsel. This is a family matter. It stopped being a family matter when you tried to force me out, I said. We're trying to implement a succession plan. You're trying to orchestrate a coup. Richard held up his hand. Let's keep this professional. Tom, you called this meeting. What's on the agenda? I stood up, activated the projector. I'm presenting evidence of unauthorized actions taken by Michael and Jennifer Thompson over the past 6 weeks. Actions that violate company bylaws, breach fiduciary duty, and in some cases may constitute fraud. That's ridiculous, Jennifer said. Let him present, Richard said. I went through the presentation methodically. First, the revised succession plan developed without board approval. Second, the hiring of Morrison without proper authorization. Third, the security changes and lockout. Fourth, unauthorized communications with staff. Fifth, attempted vote buying. I showed emails, meeting notes, recorded conversations, witness statements from crew members. The evidence was overwhelming. When I finished, the room was silent. Any response? Richard asked, looking at Michael and Jennifer. Jennifer stood up. Yes, we have a response. She activated her own presentation. What Thomas hasn't told you is that while he's been blocking operational improvements, he's been using company resources for personal benefit. She showed a spreadsheet, highlighted expenses. Over the past 3 years, Thomas has charged over $247,000 in personal expenses to the company. Luxury dinners, personal travel, equipment for his home office, all documented by our forensic accountant. I looked at Elizabeth. She nodded. I stood up. Every expense listed is properly documented and business-related, I said. I have receipts, justifications, approvals. From yourself, Jennifer said. You approved your own expenses, as is standard practice for the managing director. Not when those expenses are personal. They're not personal. A $12,000 dinner at a restaurant in Paris, client development meeting with our European distributor, a $6,000 purchase of home office equipment, required for remote work during the pandemic, personal travel to Hawaii, industry conference, which Michael attended with me. I pulled out my own files, started handing around documentation. Every expense is legitimate. Every justification is documented. Jennifer's forensic accountant cherry-picked items without context. Patricia reviewed the documents. These look appropriate to me. They're excessive, Jennifer insisted. They're standard for executive-level client development, Elizabeth said. I've reviewed the accounts. Everything is within normal business parameters. We disagree, Jennifer said. Your disagreement doesn't change the facts. Richard looked at the documents. I'm not seeing embezzlement here. I'm seeing normal business expenses. Exactly, I said. Jennifer's trying to manufacture a scandal to distract from the evidence I just presented. Michael stood up. This is pointless. We're going in circles. Because you're refusing to acknowledge your violations, I said. We haven't violated anything. You implemented major structural changes without board approval. That's a violation. We were modernizing operations. Without authorization. We have authority as co-managers. No. You have limited operational authority. Major structural changes require board votes, which you didn't get. Paul cleared his throat. Tom's correct. The actions taken do require board approval. Michael glared at him. You said... I said we could make the case. I didn't say it was legally sound. Jennifer's face flushed. You told us we had the authority. I told you we could argue for the authority. There's a difference. You said, Jennifer, I've been telling you for weeks that this approach was risky. You insisted on pushing forward. She stared at him. Are you seriously backing out now? I'm stating the legal reality. She turned to Michael. This is your father's doing. He's gotten to Paul. I haven't gotten to anyone, I said. Paul's doing his job, which is to provide accurate legal advice. Jennifer grabbed her files. This is a waste of time. We're leaving. Sit down, Richard said. Excuse me? I said sit down, we're not done. Jennifer remained standing. I don't take orders from you. You do in a board meeting. Sit down. She sat. Richard looked at me. Tom, what are you asking for? I'm asking for 3 things. First, an immediate vote to rescind all unauthorized changes implemented over the past 6 weeks. Second, a vote to terminate Morrison's consulting contract and recover any payments made to him. Third, a formal reprimand for Michael and Jennifer for violating company bylaws. That's unacceptable, Jennifer said. Those are my terms. Michael leaned forward. And if we refuse? Then I trigger the equity reversion clause. Your combined ownership drops from 49% to 25%. My ownership increases to 65%. And I exercise the buyout option to purchase your remaining shares at 40% below market value. The room went silent. You can't do that, Jennifer said. Read Article 7, Section 4. I can and I will. That would cost us millions. Should have thought of that before you tried to force me out. Michael looked at Paul. Can he actually do this? Paul nodded slowly. Yes. The provisions are clear, and based on the evidence presented, you've triggered the activation conditions. Jennifer's hands clenched into fists. This is extortion. This is contract enforcement, Elizabeth said. You signed these agreements. You're bound by them. Richard spoke up. I move that we vote on Tom's 3 requests. Patricia seconded. I second. All in favor of rescinding unauthorized changes? Richard asked. I raised my hand. Richard raised his. Patricia raised hers. 3 in favor. Motion passes. All in favor of terminating Morrison's contract and recovering payments? Same 3 hands. Motion passes. All in favor of formal reprimand for Michael and Jennifer Thompson for violating company bylaws? Same 3 hands. Motion passes. Jennifer stood up. This is bullshit. This is governance, Richard said. She grabbed her bag, looked at Michael. Let's go. Michael didn't move. Michael, she said. He looked at me, then at her. Michael, she repeated. He stood slowly, followed her out. The door slammed. After they left, Richard looked at me. That was brutal, he said. It was necessary. You really going to trigger the equity reversion? If they don't comply, yes. That'll destroy them financially. That's the point. Patricia closed her laptop. Tom, I've known you for 15 years. I've never seen you this ruthless. I've never been backed into a corner like this. You weren't backed into a corner. You could have compromised. They didn't want compromise. They wanted capitulation. Richard stood up. I need to get back to my office. But Tom, think carefully about what happens next. Even if you win this battle, you might lose the war. What does that mean? It means Michael's your son. Family damage like this doesn't heal. He damaged it first. Maybe, but you're the one with the nuclear option. And if you use it, there's no coming back. They left. I sat alone with Elizabeth. You did the right thing, she said. Did I? They were trying to steal your company. You protected it. I alienated my son. Your son alienated himself. I looked at the empty conference room, at the scattered documents, at the evidence of betrayal spread across the table. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait, Elizabeth said. They have 72 hours to comply with the board's directives. If they refuse, you trigger the equity reversion. And if they comply, then you've won. It doesn't feel like winning. It never does. I went home that afternoon. Christine was in the kitchen. How did it go? She asked. We won. All 3 motions passed. So it's over? Not yet. They have 72 hours to comply. And if they don't? Then I activate the nuclear option. She poured 2 glasses of wine, handed me one. To victory, she said. We clinked glasses, but neither of us smiled. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the board meeting, Jennifer's anger, Michael's silence, the moment when he stood up and followed her out. My son, who I'd raised, who I'd taught, who I'd trusted with my legacy, and he chose her over me. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Michael. We need to talk, in person, tomorrow. I replied, when and where? Coffee shop, downtown, 8:00 a.m. I'll be there. I set down the phone, stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow would determine everything. Either we'd find a way back, or we'd destroy each other completely. I wasn't sure which outcome I preferred.